At this point, I'd like to bring up Hilary. I'm going to stop my share. Hello.
Okay, you have to. Oh,
there we go.
All right.
There you are. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I wish I could be there in person.
I know how much you love the Methow.
Parts of the state, so yeah.
It's an honor to have you here. I've known Hilary for quite a long time. Commissioner Franz, I should say.
No, you can call me Hilary. Everybody calls me Hilary. It's what I've always been known for. I remember you before you had your daughter.
Yes, long time. Hilary used to be my boss when she was on the board at Conservation Northwest, and I was staff, and I can say she is sharp as a tack. She has been in various leadership positions and now is the Commissioner of Public Lands, where she manages 6 million acres. That's a lot. From coastal waters to aquatic reserves to working forests and farms, commercial developments, recreation areas. I mean, there's a lot going on at DNR. And there's always been a very important relationship between DNR and the Methow community. We don't have a lot of state land here, but the issues that DNR works on are very important to us. And I want to commend you, Hilary, for being very responsive to our community when projects have come up in the last couple years that have caused consternation and concern, and your willingness to hear those concerns and not just listen, but do something about them. So we recognize that, and we're really appreciative of that. So thank you. In that spirit of ongoing cooperation, we wanted to invite you to come talk about the Climate Resilience Plan, because we are, as I mentioned earlier, also working on a community climate action plan. We have different leaders from our community, everyone from the school district to fire districts to representing our tourism economy, health, social services. We're trying to get as broad of a perspective as possible. And so it's really important to us to work also with public lands agencies that are deeply embedded in the Methow. So we wanted to ask you what you thought DNR's role is in helping solve the climate crisis, and tell us a bit about the goals of your climate plan.
Yeah, thank you. So first, thank you for the opportunity to be joining today. And one of the things I love about the Methow isn't just this unbelievable landscape, which we all know is one of the most beautiful parts of our state, but how engaged the community is. I actually have traveled to every corner of the state, from Chesaw to Asotin to South Bend to Forks. And I say everywhere I go that Methow is actually the most engaged community in the state, and you proved it by filling the entire barn, which I used to go skating out right outside, with over 200 people in the middle of an afternoon, which is unheard of anywhere else, including downtown Seattle, except for if there's sometimes maybe not downtown Seattle. So thank you for this opportunity, and especially talk about Climate Resilience Plan. This has been a large body of work that we have been doing for a very long time, and we launched it right before COVID hit. So it came got launched, then quickly was lost in the chaos of this global pandemic. So the fact that you are interested in it and also looking for opportunities to partner, I'm excited about. At our agency, in our role overseeing 2.6 million acres of aquatic lands, 3 million acres of uplands, forest, agriculture, we have significant amount of water rights, being the largest wheat producer and now one of the largest vineyard producers, as well as looking at clean energy and other opportunities, and then wildfire. We're on the front lines of climate change already. We see it and experience it much till your community has, in the context of forest fires, changing conditions of forest, reduced water supply as we face drought after drought. And my belief is that we cannot keep pretending that it's way out in the future or that we can't do anything about it. We must be doing something about it in the carbon mitigation, the climate mitigation, carbon sequestration side, and in the climate adaptation, climate resiliency. So in partnering with the Climate Impacts Group out of UW, we worked for a number of years to truly assess what is the impacts we're seeing on the lands we manage, those 6 million acres of lands, not only today, but the projected change we're going to see over the next 20 plus years. And then to actually build a plan where we are at every single level of our operations, having climate adaptation and resiliency be part of the decision making, not just in one program, but in every program. Our goal, and I loved how you were saying the goal is not to have a plan that sits on the shelf. Those who know me, I can't stand, cutting down a tree to create a plan that nobody ever opens again. But instead being able to say, are we setting goals and metrics, and are we making sure that the targets that we have set we're achieving? So we have developed that plan. The goal of that plan is that it doesn't just apply to Department of Natural Resources 6 million acres that we manage. We're in all 39 counties. The lands and waters we manage are representative of every piece of land in Washington state. And the goal is to bring that information and resources to the community level, where they understand the challenges they're seeing in climate change, they understand the investments they need, and then to be a partner with them in getting those investments, because doing that will not only help us in our management of our land, but also to help that community be more resilient and management of their lands and waters. So what is that? I'll give you an example of what that looks like. And again, part of this is, oh, Casey's on. Hey, Casey. Oh my God, I love that. All these people I haven't seen in forever. So part of where we're looking in climate, this climate resilience, and I think there's a huge opportunity here for the Methow and for your organization to partner with DNR. Before we even launched this, we've actually started to go out into some key communities in the state that are on the front lines of climate, forest health, dying forest, wildfire, drought, impacts in agricultural production, and begin a conversation. And so here's an example of what we've already done and what we're hoping to have replicate out. And I think your community would be a perfect place for us to do that. So Chelan, Wenatchee area is an area that has clearly been hit hard by forest fires, forest conditions changing, limited in-stream flows, limited water resources. We're even seeing not the drought conditions impacting agricultural yield, but also the context of dust storms. And so we reached out to the community there. They also have a pretty high clean energy portfolio in the sense of wind and other capacities. And we reached out to them and say, we'd like to have a community conversation. And we started with the local leaders. So we're talking about the county commissioners, the city council, the sheriff, the fire chief, the school board, the PUD. And to be honest, we didn't know how it was going to go because it's largely Republican, conservative. This was about a year ago. Climate change wasn't something you could just readily talk about on the streets and not get sort of attacked possibly, and the leaders especially. And so we didn't know how the conversation was going to go. 60 people showed up, which was an unbelievable number. And everyone, after talking about the presentations of what the science is showing, what we're seeing of impacts in our management of lands, but in also helping that community economically and environmentally, they all said, we already know, we see it, will you help work with us? And so we have begun working to identify what are some of the key projects so that we're not just at that 40,000 foot level talking in a theoretical way, but really getting on the ground to start to get some key projects that are important, from forest health to actual water storage. And so I think there's a huge opportunity as you're completing your plan, right, to then marry our plans up together and identify what are some of the quick, sort of not quick, but immediate projects we want to go to. We're going to obviously have to do it within the context of limited financial resources, as the state is looking at a $9 billion hole. But I think there's opportunities for us to not say we got to put it on the back burner because climate change isn't waiting, and instead say this is an opportunity for job creation. This is an opportunity for economic resilience and for environmental resilience. And so I'm super excited you guys are getting this plan done. And one of the great things is I've hired two of your best friends, as you know. So we're bringing all the good people inside. So that natural partnership is going to happen.
They're the best. Yeah. You have good company. You're smart. Like I said, you're sharp as a tack.
Yes.
I wanted to bring up, these are hard issues. Climate is hard issues. Forest management has its own set of challenging issues, and these are issues that have been there before you took office, and they'll continue to be there. But I feel like we're at a crossroads where the science is telling us that these forests and large, big trees are critical for our resilience, for climate change. I mean, we need these intact. So, from my recent experience working with your staff on Virginia Ridge, which was a positive experience in the end, I see that the biggest challenge we face in really implementing a meaningful climate resilience plan is that financial incentive to remove the largest, most climate resilient trees to fund the trust. And this is at direct odds with forest structure that frankly DNR scientists highlight is lacking in the 20-year forest health plan. So how do we begin to bridge that gap, Hilary?
So tell me again, I want to make sure, because your voice went down. What is the piece that you said is lacking in the forest health plan? So I hear that.
Well, the resilience is telling us we need that forest structure. We need old forests. On the other side, we've got the trust mandate that says we need to make money. And so there's an incentive built in to take that structure out, to remove the big old trees. And so on one hand, we're saying we want to build climate resilience. On the other hand, we're saying we want to take these trees to make money to fund schools. And these two things, the way they're implemented right now on the ground, are at odds. So how are we going to bridge that gap? How are we going to change that?
So here's where I would start. I'm going to start from the premise that I think this state, one of the most sustainable things we can do is have significant amount of our forests that are carbon sequestration value forests be protected in conservation. Absolutely. And then we must have a significant amount of land base that is working forest land. Every one of us, I can't see everybody because we're not in a room, but every one of us uses wood product from every moment of our day. And the most sustainable thing we can be doing is actually growing that wood right here in Washington State. It's the fact is, because we have better practices and management than many parts of the world and even many other states. Also, I think one of the biggest threats we are going to see to the environment is the conversion of our working forest lands, especially frankly with COVID. We've already been losing millions at an unbelievable pace and scale because the population growth, more and more people moving out and living in our forest areas and even our agricultural areas. With COVID now, you're seeing some of the largest companies in the country, from the Amazons and the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the Googles, say we're going to now move to over 50% of our employee base can work from home. Well, I know a lot of people who'd rather not live in Seattle and would rather live where you live, right? And they can afford it, right? And I think we have to be looking at this not as we've got to stop cutting trees, right? We've got to start looking that not all trees are the same. We have hugely valuable, high carbon storage trees, right? That have huge conservation values for fish and wildlife, right? And water. Quantity and quality. And then we have a huge land base that actually should be larger than it is right now, just as our conservation lands, for working forest lands. And how do we start getting at tools that ensure both of those? So some of the ways we do that, we've completed a carbon sequestration. First of all, I'd love more money for the conservation purchase, right? And thanks, the Congress is moving forward a bill which would be one of the largest. We've been trying to get more funding at the state level for conservation forever with limited luck, because it doesn't rise to the value of priority that many of our other issues do, as you are well aware of, right? And we have got to, given climate change, given also the context of how COVID has moved more and more people out into nature at an unbelievable pace and scale, which is a good thing, to leverage that to get more funding for that, coupled with utilizing more of the carbon markets that are out there or creating our own. So we've mapped all of the state, the entire state, private, public, forest for carbon sequestration, so we could start to understand what is the actual value of those and what is the opportunities now to enter into markets for the most valuable of those forests based on the carbon sequestration. In addition to that, our forest action plan that we're doing for the west side, our forest health plan is different from a carbon sequestration plan, which is different from also from a forest action plan. It's largely targeting that 2.7 million acres of forest that are dying, right, and leading to the catastrophic fires, okay? As you know, it wasn't set out to solve the carbon sequestration, reduction of carbon. It was set out to make sure our forests return back to the resiliency they once had. The forest action plan that actually Derek and Jen are putting together is some of the most brilliant, innovative thinking of leveraging multiple issues, from carbon sequestration value to the context of conversion and the threat of conversion to our forests, to the management tools, and getting that plan done this year. It's largely for the west side right now, will be some of the most transformative work that is informed and includes carbon sequestration and climate resiliency, coupled with the threat of conversion. But I think we've got to be looking at this not as working forests are what's killing the climate or killing the opportunity for, right? It is both. And we have to look at our forests in that way. They're not all the same.
I totally agree. I think we could even, I think there is enough momentum locally that to even think about having a mill. I think it was really painful for a lot of people to see the logs leaving out of Virginia Ridge and being shipped over to the west side, when we should be processing that here at home. It's just inefficient, and I think in Okanagan County, the question I think the biggest obstacle is really that trust, because there is a long history between this community, or a lot of communities in DNR, and I think there's some trust building to do. And I think that trust comes from, how do we make sure that these investments, that even working forests are managed in a way that is compatible with our climate goals, so that we're not just protecting the existing high carbon sequestration trees, but we are growing new big trees that are so lacking on the landscape. And we're not taking every single tree, we're not clearing forests, but we are managing in a way that basically grows big trees on the landscape, even on working forests. And I think if there was some more certainty around sideboards, accountability around that, I think we could move forward a lot faster and even look at things like a mill. I think there's so much common ground to support working forests, and even here locally, but I think that's the piece that's missing.
Yeah, so again, the climate resilience plan, like I said, is going to be driven down through every part of the decision-making of our agency. So to the extent sort of the management of our own state trust lands will have those elements being part of that decision-making. And that now we're in that place we finished the plan, and now it's how do you drive it down to that decision-making? Where does it come in? What does it look like as that is being factored in? But I think, I'm just going to say it again. Right now, everybody should be freaking the hell out about, I'm not kidding. I am literally worried about the conversion of our forest and agricultural lands in Washington state over the next 5 years, and what it's going to do not only for our quality of life and for climate and the impacts of climate, but also the context of our food source, our salmon populations, our water quantity, and our water quality. If you are looking at if you're watching any of the real estate right now, you might think everything's kind of slowed down because COVID, nobody's buying, the markets are a little skittish. That's not the case at all. There is unbelievable. I was in Klickitat just this last a week ago, right? And down in Skamania and up in your area, there is an unbelievable pace and scale of parcelization off of these lands, right? Which we've not, I mean, this is my work for 20 plus years, growth management, a tool that is great in concept, but very challenging in actually delivering the results we need, as we all know. And if we're not focused at, and you guys should be focused at the local level. That's why I loved hearing that you're focused on the comprehensive plan, obviously working with FutureWise, former organization I worked with, thinking about how we set a broad vision at those key landscape levels in Washington state that are likely to now have not been threatened before. They haven't been threatened before because people weren't going to travel 3+ hours to get to Seattle or so that, you know, the jobs, but now that's all changed and they can afford it, and they will. So, and I think one of the values of public lands and public ownership, right, is that it is protected from being privatized. Your community right now is under threat because of the purchasing of water rights by an investment company. The more we're putting ownership of lands within public, that means we will actually ensure that it's available to the public versus being monetized and sold off to the highest bidder. And the same goes for forest, agriculture, water.
That's great. We're running a little over time, but I just wanted to take a couple questions from the audience. There's a few that have come in to the Q&A. One of them is from Sarah and Hans, Sarah Schrock and Hans Smith. Can Hilary explain wildland firefighting budgeting? How is it funded through DNR revenues from land, state revenues, and from other sources? Or is it federal dollars?
None of the above. All right, so so the way firefighting, so we're the largest firefighting agency of the state. We oversee the fighting of fires on 13 million acres of land. Though if you read our wildfire strategic plan, which you can find online on our website, you will see that we are moving to a place of making sure that between local fire districts, U.S. Forest Service, BLM land that fights their fires on their own land, we obviously add support just like they support us. And then our 13 million acres of land that we oversee it, there is still land that's called no man's land that has no protection. Our goal is that every acre of Washington state will be covered by some form of fire protection. The 13 million acres of land that we fight fires on is our state land, obviously the 3 million acres of land. And then the rest is small forest landowners and large forest landowners. They pay a fee to the state for that protection. And so that's where the bulk of the money comes, but it is not that enough. And as you probably have witnessed, we are providing backup and support on land. Many of you may be in a fire district. All of your fire districts are calling on our help to fight those fires when they get significant, right? Similar with federal government, they step in and provide support to us on our lands because much of their fires and ours start to commingle, but then we also do the same for them. So we get a base budget every single year of $40 million that will come from the fees that are paid by small forest landowners and large landowners for it. But on average, over the last 10 years, with increasing catastrophic fires, about $153 million are being spent. Now, majority of the fire protection we provide, besides our state land, is not actually going towards protecting the fires on large landowners. That's not where the fires are. Yeah, Roslyn is a perfect example and even your community, where much of the fires will start on state and federal land, but they will quickly start to move to your residential communities, right? That, you know, the WUIs, the wildland urban interface, which is in a fire district, but your fire district has very limited resources. So we pay for it out of the BSA account, which is an emergency fund, because based on whatever that, you know, bill is at the end of the year, then the state has to pay for it out of emergency fund. I have been pushing for us to stop paying on the back end and start investing on the front end, and those things that will make sure we're keeping our fires small. Everything from prevention of wildfires, helping our homes and our communities become more fire resilient. This coming fall in your community, we are launching a campaign that is going to, and I urge you guys to get involved. It's a huge opportunity to start to truly get community fire resilience, not just one homeowner here and one homeowner there, but all your small forest landowners, all of your private smaller home. And so I'll make sure you guys have that information. You should get engaged. But the goal will be is that we are investing up front in making the communities more resilient, the forest more resilient through forest health. So we will reduce those catastrophic fires. In addition to that, we have truly underfunded wildfire protection over the last 10 plus years. It's why I have, 9 helicopters to fight fires, and they all fought in the Vietnam War. They all have the bullet holes to show it. None of these are modern, quick, efficient technology. And we're now fighting fires in every corner of the state, with about 60% of the fires east side, 40% west side. Whatcom and Snohomish, for example, have had the largest fires yet to date this year. And those were in May, and unheard of, if you look back 10 years. So we are trying to change the way government has historically handled, is they wait for the crisis is at their feet and they're now in reaction mode, for us to be at a proactive, because we're going to pay for it regardless. The question is, we pay in the face of smoke and flames, or we're going to pay up front to invest in making our landscapes and our communities more resilient.
Here's a question. Here's a good just follow-up question, and then we probably got to wrap it up. But it's from Casey. Related to that funding, have you considered seeking compensation from fossil fuel companies for climate-related impacts and expenses, as many local jurisdictions are now doing?
So I have looked at this as a possibility. I mean, one of the things has been sort of a distraction, and all the other things I'm doing, of carbon sequestration mapping to carbon sequestration opportunities for investment. Currently, our strategy has been more focused on getting quick, dedicated revenue, and we moved a bill that it would come from insurance companies, because they have the most to lose right now. And frankly, the strategy they've been using was just taking people off the insurance, and now not even providing the protection. And part of it, we believe that was a quicker, more efficient strategy that had a real clear, direct nexus between protecting the homeowners and the communities, and the cost was very small. We are now looking at a suite of revenue opportunities, especially given the $9 billion plus hole that the legislature is going to be facing. So more on that, Casey. Very interested to think and consider what that looks like and how.
Well, Hilary, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very, very busy woman. So, and that includes also going out on cattle drives.
I know. Amazing. That was really great.
Yeah, you come out and do that here too.
I will. You set it up. I'll be there.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for all your work.
Yeah, we're excited to partner with you on climate resilience. So thank you.
All right, let's connect on the forest resilience work. Okay.
Sounds good.
Excellent. All right, thanks all.
Good evening.
Bye.
Okay.